Answer to this problem should be -4. Alright, the answer to this one is 60. Pick a number from 1 to 5. The winning number today is 3. If you have all the work shown for all the problems, bring it up here and show me. If you don't, you can turn it in late in the bucket in the back. There are 7 here, 6 have homework. 6 divided by 7 is 86. Here are the answers. We'll go through these first, and then we will go over anything you need to have explained afterwards. Number 1 is 1. 2 is 3 plus or minus square root of 11. 3 is 1 plus or minus square root of 2. 4 is 3 plus or minus square root of 5. 5 is -1 plus or minus square root of 13 over 2. And remember, this is one of those problems where you have to divide everything by -1, and you don't have to put a negative sign there. 6 is -5 plus or minus I square root of 15 over 2. Again, that's one of those problems where you divide by a negative number, but you don't need the negative sign there. Number 7, the answer is not what you see at the bottom. I discovered in the last class that 4 plus 24 is indeed 28, not 26. So that makes a difference. If we put a 28 here, we're going to end up not with this answer, but a 2 plus or minus, that would be 2 square root of 7 over 2. So when you divide, you should get 1 plus or minus the square root of 7. And 8 is -5 plus or minus the square root of 17 over 2. 9 is -1 plus or minus I square root of 23 over 4. Number 10 is not 1 or -1. This is going to be an I in there as well. So you should have positive I or negative I for your answer. Today's objective, the same thing, quadratic equations with real coefficients that have complex solutions. Here's an example. Is this in the right order? What should I do first? Just the x to the second power? Negative x squared. So we'll do that. Now what? How many x squares do we have? Just 1. So we have no more left. What should we put next? Minus x. Minus 2x, because this one is on the right side. That's right. Minus 3. And minus 1 because this was on the right. Anybody not understand how we came up with negative x squared minus x minus 2x minus 3 minus 1 equals 0? What should I do next? Combine like terms. We don't have any more x squares. What does this become? Negative 3x. And what does this become? Negative 4. All right, what is the formula for the discriminant?
B squared minus 4 times 6.
Yeah, b squared minus 4ac. What is b? Negative 3. We will square that. Minus 4 times a. What's a? And what's c? How many negative signs do we have to the right of negative 3 squared? 3 of them, so that means the operation will be what? Yeah, it'd be minus. So negative 3 squared is 9. And then we have minus 4 times 1 times 4 is 16. So what is the discriminant? Negative 7. And what does that tell us? It's not real. It'll be complex. Okay, on the next page, what we will do is use the discriminant of negative 7, the a value of negative 1, and the b value of negative 3 to put this all in the quadratic formula. Alright, so the quadratic formula is negative b, so we have a negative 3 already. Negative negative 3. Plus or minus the square root of the discriminant. We already found that. And then on the bottom we have 2 times a negative 1. What's the first thing I write next? Positive 3. What is the square root of a negative 7? What does it become? Yeah, I square root of 7. And then over negative 2. What should I do now? Yeah, multiply everything by negative 1. If I multiply this by negative 1, I get a negative 3. What happens here with this one? If I multiply all this by a negative 1, in theory, it would be a negative I square root of 7. And then, of course, on the bottom you would have a positive 2. But is this necessary? No. Yeah, just negative 3 plus or minus I square root of 7 over 2. On the practice problem, you should have a negative x squared plus 3x. That takes care of these. This becomes plus 2x. This stays, so it's plus 6. This moves, so it is plus 3. Negative x squared plus 5x plus 9 equals 0. How many of you had this much right? So you're still on the right track. Alright, so here we go. For the discriminant, it's 5 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times 9. That's 25, and the sign will be plus 36. How many had the discriminant, which is not a square root? How many had 61 for the discriminant? So we have 4 with the discriminant. Alright, so on the next page we have to use 61 for the discriminant. B in this case is 5, and A is going to be negative 1. Continuing on to the quadratic formula, you should have negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 61 over 2 times a negative 1. So negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 61 over a negative 2, which means we have to divide everything by negative 1. That will give us 5 plus or minus the square root of 61 over 2. You did 3 plus 4 is 7, divided by 7 to get 1?
No, I did 3 plus 4 divided by 7. Plus 6 plus 4 divided by 2.
Oh, here's your problem. When you typed it into the calculator, you did 3 plus 4 times, or divided by 7, right?
Yeah.
It's doing the division first. So you have to do this first and then divide it to come up with 1. And that would be a 5. So 1 and 5 is 6. Square it to get 36. This comes out to be a 2. So the answer is 38. Give this one a try. On the practice, you should do negative 2x minus x plus 7 equals 0. Just put them in the right order. They're all on the left. The discriminant is negative 1 squared minus 4 times negative 2 times 7. So that's 1 plus 56. So the discriminant is 57. How many had 57 for the discriminant? All right, at least 3. All right, so on the next page, what we will do is use 57 for the discriminant. A is negative 2 and B is a negative 1. For the quadratic formula, we should have a negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 57 over 2 times a negative 2. So that is 1 plus or minus the square root of 57, which cannot be simplified, over a negative 4. Divide everything by a negative 1. The answer to the bonus is 11. For this bonus, A equals 2, B equals negative 3, and C equals a negative 1. Answer is 83. ACT test prep questions. The first one, the coordinates of the endpoints of segment CD in the standard XY coordinate plane are negative 4, negative 2, and 14, 2. What is the X coordinate of the midpoint of CD? The key to this problem is if you remember the formula for a midpoint. It is x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And it's the same for y, except you don't even need it for this problem. This would give you the coordinate. You only need this. Negative 4 plus 14 is what? It's 10, but we have to divide it by 2 to get 5. So the answer is C. What is the surface area in square inches of an 8-inch cube? Okay, we need the surface area of a cube. How many sides are on a cube? We have 6 sides on a cube. Are they all the same? Yes, because it's a cube. How do I find the surface area if this side is S and they're all the same? What's the surface area of just one side? What would I do? Yeah, 8 times 8, that's right. So 8 times 8 is 64 for one side, so I multiply it by 6 and come up with 384. A shortcut that you could use that you don't have to use your calculator for is if you know 8 squared is 64 and you have to multiply it by 6, the way you can save some time on the ACT test, which is a timed test, is if you know when you multiply 6 times 4, I know this is 64, but at some point the back end there you have to do 6 times 4, 6 times 4 will always end in a 4 because it's 24. So this is the only answer that ends in 4 out of all the choices.
We ain't got school Monday. Did you know that? Or did you forget?